Stop for a second. Everything you have been told about winter survival might get you killed. If you were dropped into the frozen wilderness tonight, with temperatures plummeting to 20 degrees below zero, your first instinct would be to build a massive, roaring fire. It feels like the right thing to do. It feels safe. But 200 years ago, on the violent and unforgiving American frontier, a big fire didn't just mean warmth. It meant death. Think about it. A roaring fire is a beacon. The smoke rises like a signal flag visible for miles against the clear winter sky. The light destroys your night vision, blinding you to what's lurking in the dark shadows just beyond the trees. And worse, it consumes an immense amount of calories and wood, forcing you to constantly move, chop, and exhaust yourself just to feed the flames. However, there was a different breed of survivor who walked these woods in the late 18th century. Men like Simon Kenton, they called him the Iron Man of the frontier, not just because he was tough, but because he possessed a knowledge that bordered on the supernatural. He could vanish into a snowy landscape and survive for weeks without a cabin, without a tent, and seemingly without fire. How did he do it? How do you sleep comfortably when the ground is frozen solid and the air hurts to breathe? The secret wasn't about fighting the cold with brute force. It was about mastering physics. It was about creating a micro-environment so efficient, so stealthy, that you could sleep soundly while a blizzard raged above you, completely invisible to anyone passing by just 10 feet away. Tonight, we are not just talking about history. We are going to resurrect a forgotten technology. This isn't just a hole in the ground. This is the frontiersman's invisible furnace. It is a masterpiece of thermal engineering that utilizes the insulation of the earth, the chemistry of specific tree bark, and the principles of trapped air pockets. I'm going to show you exactly how Simon Kenton built this survival system. We will break down the science of why it works better than modern heaters, and most importantly, I will teach you the specific steps to build one yourself so you can survive the freezing cold with zero smoke, zero light, and maximum heat. Let's dig into the mechanics. Why go underground? You see, the surface air temperature fluctuates wildly with the wind, but the earth is a battery. It stores thermal mass. When you build a fire on top of the ground, 80% of that heat is lost immediately. It goes straight up into the sky or is blown away by the wind. You are literally heating the universe, not yourself. The brilliance of Kenton's method was capturing that heat. He would start by digging a hole, not a grave, just a small, precise pit, roughly the width of his shoulders and about a foot deep. This wasn't random. These dimensions were crucial, too wide, and the heat dissipates too fast, too deep, and the oxygen gets choked off. Now, here is the secret ingredient that most modern survivalists miss. You can't just throw any random sticks in there. Pine pops and sparks, maple burns too fast. Kenton used the gold standard of the frontier, dry white oak bark. Why bark? Why not the wood? This is where the chemistry gets fascinating. The bark of the white oak tree is incredibly dense. When it's dry, it acts almost like high-grade charcoal. It doesn't produce the volatile gases that create tall, dancing flames and heavy smoke. Instead, it burns with a fierce, steady infrared glow. It creates a bed of coals that can pulse with heat for 12 hours straight without needing to be fed. Kenton would line the bottom of his pit with this bark. He wasn't just dumping it in, he was engineering airflow. He would create a small structure, stacking the bark chips to allow oxygen to be pulled from the bottom, feed the coal bed, and release pure heat upwards. He essentially built a smokeless gasifier stove in the dirt, 2 centuries before modern science gave it a name. Once that coal bed was established, a glowing heart of heat deep in the earth, he would do something counterintuitive. He would cover it back up, not completely, but he would partially bury the fire, leaving only small intake channels for air. Here is where the magic happens. You don't just sit next to the fire, you become part of it. Once the pit is lightly covered with dirt, leaving those small channels for the fire to breathe, Simon Kenton would sit directly over the pit. He would cross his legs, centering his body over the warmth rising from the earth. Then he would take a heavy wool blanket and drape it over his head and shoulders, letting the edges fall all the way to the ground around him, sealing him in. The frontiersmen called this technique making a little room, and that is exactly what it is. You are creating a microclimate. The earth blocks the freezing wind. The wool blanket captures every calorie of heat rising from the coals, and your body heat gets reflected back at you. Inside that bubble, the temperature can rise 30 to 40 degrees higher than the outside air. Think about the efficiency of that. You aren't trying to heat the entire forest. You are only heating the 3 cubic feet of space immediately around your body. It is a closed-loop thermal system. Outside, the snow might be falling, the wind might be howling, and the temperature might drop to levels that would freeze water in minutes. But inside that blanket, it is warm enough to doze off, even sitting upright. Accounts from the time speak of men waking up in the morning with a layer of snow covering their shoulders, completely unaware that a storm had passed through while they slept in their invisible furnace. This is not just a parlor trick for history enthusiasts. It is a masterclass in survival priorities. Modern gear fails, propane canisters run empty, batteries die in the cold. But physics does not fail. This method relies on the thermal mass of the planet and the chemical energy of wood. And when you are done, you simply kick the dirt back into the hole, and it is like you were never there. No scorched earth, no fire ring, no trace. However, before you rush out to the woods to try this, there is a critical warning that you must understand. This technique saved lives, but it also killed the careless. The danger is not the fire burning you, it is carbon monoxide. Burning wood, especially in a smoldering state underground, produces gases. If you seal yourself completely inside that blanket with no ventilation, you might just go to sleep and never wake up. The old frontiersmen knew this by instinct and experience. They never kept their heads completely inside the room for long periods. The technique is to keep the blanket tight around your shoulders to trap the heat for your core. But keep your face exposed to fresh air or ensure there is a significant vent near the top. Survival is about managing risk. The cold will kill you quickly. Carbon monoxide will kill you quietly. The smart survivor navigates between the two. Simon Kenton lived to be 81 years old, surviving in a time and place where most men didn't make it past 30. He survived because he respected the rules of the wild. He knew that the best survival skills aren't the ones that look impressive on a screen. They are the ones that work when everything else fails.